Good morning, students. Today we'll be starting off with Unit 4. This is rewards and incentives. It talks about rewards and incentives mainly from a sales person's point of view. And this chapter also covers compensation for executives. Executives are people at the senior management level. So once this unit is done, we would have covered the syllabus and we'll start looking at the question papers. Okay. So what is a reward? So reward is anything that is given in recognition of somebody's achievement. So at home, when you score very well in the exams, your parents may reward you with something. So that is to encourage you, to motivate you, and also it's a token of appreciation that you have done well and you have made them happy. But what is reward management? So rewards management typically in an organization is concerned with formulation of rewards. So how you will reward people, in what way you will reward people, for what kind of achievements. So all that is decided in rewards management. Not only formulation, also implementation of the rewards policies that you have formed, that you have framed, so that people feel they're rewarded fairly, equitably, and consistently in accordance with their value to the organization. Fairly means two people, same achievement, they are all getting similar rewards. So it is fair. And plus, it is in proportion to what they have achieved. Okay. Like you cannot, for a salesperson who has achieved more than 100% target, you cannot just present him a pen and say that it's a reward. You rather keep quiet, don't reward him at all. That's a better option. Because it should be justified for his achievements. Equitably between people, there should be parity. Consistently, so 1 year you reward, next year you don't reward, that's not really appreciated. So every person who has similar achievements are rewarded similarly. There is parity of rewarding. So rewards management and becomes very important because it has to be absolutely correct. If the reward is not proper, it can lead to negative motivation. So the management places a lot of emphasis on framing the right kind of rewards policies and also implementing it in a timely manner. Okay. So generally rewards boost employees' morale. Obviously, right? When parents appreciate you for achieving something, you feel more motivated to achieve better the next time round, right? So typically employees work in an organization. One is for salary because they need the money to survive. They need the money to lead a good life. And employees also take up jobs because they love what they do. So many times that is not the case because people take up jobs just for the sake of the money they get. It is very difficult to get this combination right. But the management can create an atmosphere by which employees start liking their workplace, they start loving the job that they are doing. So when these requirements are sufficiently addressed, employees feel highly motivated. So a policy that offers incentives in exchange for achievement can motivate all the employees to prove their worth. So it is not just the monetary incentive, but it is also creating an atmosphere so that employees love what they do. So what happens? How does it improve the morale? So when the workplace is conducive, when there's mutual respect, sufficient appreciation, a lot of encouragement, people always want to give little extra. So that is how people are motivated. So these are all small perks, right? You are appreciated. I mean, even good words go a long way in motivating people. And when people are sufficiently rewarded, they wish to stay back in the same organization. I mean, this also leads to employee retention because their morale is high. They want to do things for the organization. They feel they are one with the organization. They want to give their best. And employees are completely self-driven. Okay, employees, when you motivate them very well, you are triggering their capacities. So hidden capacities which probably others, which probably the employees themselves didn't know about. So when such capabilities come out, they are able to give a lot more. So they are highly self-driven. You just need to trigger them at the right points. And when employees and employers work in this fashion, when there is mutual trust, and there is general happiness and wanting to do things for the organization, and nothing beats such a combination, right, for motivating employees. In fact, the various motivational theories also talk about various factors that drive employees. So these factors that drive employees, those are the ones which need to be targeted. A practical and a smart manager will know where to you strike the right balance and drive the employees. So the factors are the ones the manager needs to fulfill so that the employees feel happy and do their best. So once an employee is motivated sufficiently, there is no stopping him on what all he can achieve and what all he can do for the organization. Right? Okay. Now, having said that, there are different kinds of rewards. What I've done is I've just given it in the form of small short notes. The first is you have intrinsic rewards, eccentric rewards, monetary rewards, non-monetary rewards. So, but then many times you'll get short notes on these different types of rewards. The first one is intrinsic and eccentric rewards. See, in one of the earlier chapters, we had discussed about various motivational theories, and one was by Herzberg, who had proposed a two-factor motivational theory. He called one set of factors the motivators, the other ones as hygiene factors. So hygiene factors related to the job itself, and motivators are what you achieve in the job. I mean, it is beyond conditions, working conditions. So intrinsic rewards, the same connection. These are rewards that come from inside the job itself or factors that are directly linked to the job. They are related to the job content. For example, the working condition, what kind of pay the employee is getting, what kind of recognition, praise he is getting for doing work. There is trust, responsibility, and so these are some factors which are related to the job content itself. Eccentric factors include things mostly in tangible form that the employee receives, like promotions, fringe benefits. So these are the things around the job. Okay, they relate to the job context. Sometimes gifts are given to employees, bonuses are given, wage increase, salary increase, working conditions. So, like flexibility. So all these are what? These are around the job. So one is the job content itself, which is intrinsic to the job. They enjoy doing that work, but because they enjoy and do a good job, there are eccentric rewards given in the form of better pay, promotion, bonus. So these rewards also matter a lot. Okay, and things like good furniture, good chair, and so on. So those are all factors which are not part of job content, but they drive the employee to do better. Then the other category of rewards are monetary and non-monetary rewards. Monetary rewards obviously includes some of the basics like salary or wages, bonus, financial incentives, promotion. Promotion in the sense, which promotion, whatever pay rise they get, profit sharing, stock option plans, and so on. Okay. Monetary rewards are eccentric to work, and they are the reason why employees join work in the first place. Okay, and there are the non-monetary rewards also, which include status, appreciation, recognition. So mostly these are the fringe benefits. Then delegation, working condition, job enrichment. It's how enriching, how fulfilling the job is, security on the job, So many people in private sector, you can see, they mainly worry about lack of job security. So it's very important that people feel they are stable while working for an organization. Okay, so these are monetary and non-monetary rewards. In case short note is asked, you can just go through the notes I've given, or even you can elaborate these points by yourself. Okay, then moving on, there are different kinds of pay that are given to people. So some of them are, one is skill based pay. So under this, a person is paid based on the number or depth of skill that he acquires. So basically, if a person is able to multitask and is able to do a wide variety of activities within the organization, there is recognition for him and he is paid for that. So so whenever he acquires additional skills, in addition to general pay that he gets, there is an increase in the pay based on the kind of skills he is acquiring. Now there are three categories here. One is the horizontal skills, so which basically involves broadening of skills in terms of range of tasks. The person is able to do multiple things. For example, a teacher for English is able to teach social studies or science as well. So multiple subjects a teacher is able to teach, but it is at the teacher's level only. Now vertical skill means acquiring skills which are of higher level. Like a teacher is able to put in extra effort to support the HOD or principal and thereby learn what they are doing specifically. So that is vertical skills. And the third kind of skills, they relate to depth of skill. Like a teacher may be proficient in English and teach English, but maybe the teacher goes ahead and does a master's course or enrolls for a doctorate program, thus making herself more strong in the same subject area, making herself very strong in the same subject area. So there are skills for broadening, there are skills where you move up in the ladder, and there are skills where you increase your expertise in your current area of expertise. Okay. So by rewarding people based on skills, how does this help? So some features include, so skill based pay is person based and not job based. So obviously what the person acquires, that becomes more important. So it awards the person for what he or she is rather than for what job the person has performed. Okay, job worth is reflected in the basic minimum pay that anyway the person is getting, but whatever promotion or progression he has to show, it is based on what skills he acquires. Okay, it rewards people for a broad range of skills, and it also motivates people to become more multitask, and it also positively encourages people to acquire more skills. But what is the negative side to it? See, ultimately in an organization, a person can be highly skilled. People can become too obsessed acquiring new skills rather than focusing on output of their own job, because they know anyway they are getting the minimum pay that is required for survival to do the job. So they will be only appreciated for new skills. So they will feel we'll rather focus on acquiring new skills. Why we should focus so much on output or productivity? So this is one. The next kind of pay is performance-based pay. So when the pay is directly linked to output or performance of the employee, it is performance-based pay. So we spoke about piece rate system. So these are all examples of performance-based pay. So employers use this method to evaluate how well the employee works, and thus also decide his salary. Okay. Now salesperson, especially for them, they receive more for selling more, and salespersons who aren't able to sell more aren't rewarded that well. Okay. This is very objective because there is a direct link to the output. But the negative side is that the various studies have shown that performance related pay leads to opposite outcome. especially when this is applied to white collared thinking jobs, where it is very difficult to measure the output. So if it is a physical activity like number of shirts, number of toys made and all, it is easier to connect. But people for whom they have to think, they have to plan, and there is a long gestation period between the plans implemented and the results, then in such cases this can highly demotivate people, especially at managerial levels. And a fundamental criticism of this pay for performance is that performance of a complicated or complex job is often reduced to a single measure of performance. I mean, something is very difficult to work on, and two people in a software industry might be coding for their customer. One might be doing a very tough job. I mean, it might be a very complicated code because of the customer's requirement. The other one is probably just copying and pasting a routine code. So comparing both the outputs and saying that both have finished one set of codings and rewarding them accordingly is really unfair, because one person had to put in a lot more effort. And similarly, a call center may judge an employee based on the average length of a call with the customer, which may be highly unfair, because quality of conversation is also very important. So this is skill based. The next one is competency based pay. So this talks about how well an employee does the job. So output is important, but it also talks about the capability of the person, how skilled he is, how capable he is to perform the job. That is how competent he is. So this is kind of a mix between skills and output. A competency based salary structure is based on employee proficiency and expertise. So job competency refers to the level at which an employee performs, usually in the field that requires specialized experience, knowledge or experience. Okay. So for a less experienced employee, the benefit of competency based pay is that the level of seniority has little bearing on compensation. Instead, emphasis is strictly placed on how well the employee performs, what kind of knowledge he is able to bring to the table, what kind of value add. Okay. They increase incentive for the worker and motivate him to become a high achiever. And competency based pay system can create a culture of improvement, because compensation is based on how an employee is competitive and how he shows improvement. Of course, on the negative side, this many times lead to subjective evaluation. It is not very objective, because a manager's interpretation of a person's capability can be highly subjective based on manager's own perception, own relationship with the employee. Okay, so I mean, we have seen in some of the earlier lessons, I mean, I'm sure you would have heard about halo effect and horn effect, where based on one quality, the person starts passing judgment about the other. So if that is the case, a manager will pass judgment about the person without actually being very objective about the real competency, real skills the person has. Okay, so this is one. And one more difficult thing is, this is a very complex process. It can be very difficult to establish which competencies lead to improvement in productivity or performance. And lastly, um there is this concept called broad banding. So broad banding is a strategy for salary structure that consolidate large number of pay grades into a few pay bands. So maybe you will only have a few bands under broad banding like A, B, C, D. They reduce the number of hierarchies in an organization. Like many government organizations, you can see that from base level to it goes on. So many levels are there. Even in some of the old private organizations. But the latest trend is having very few levels. Maybe there are just 4 levels, A, B, C, D. So entry level is A, and what max you can achieve is D. Okay, within each band you have various pay scales and ranges. Okay, so broad banding evolved because organizations wanted to flatten their hierarchies and move decision making closer to the point where necessity and knowledge exist in the organization. See, one disadvantage is there are fewer promotional opportunities in this structure. But then within the same band, you get a better pay increase, career growth, and so on. And this is especially very helpful in organization like people who get involved in research, people who are not ambitious in vertical growth, people who are more interested in showing their skills. So in such organizations, this definitely is a good motivator because they needn't bother themselves moving up and managing people and stuff like that. I mean, there are many people who are very happy doing what they are doing it very well, and improving themselves in that area. And see, as you move higher up in the ladder, you will have to start managing people. Some people aren't very comfortable with that, so this definitely helps. Now, what are the features of broadbanding? It streamlines hierarchy structure within the organization and it simplifies that as well. It promotes and facilitates internal movement within the organization and emphasizes other attributes of position other than pay grade, which is already disclosed. It gives more transparency and added trust in management. More so because since the levels are not too many, it's easier for a level A guy to approach a level C guy as well. I mean, there is no such formalities. But what happens on the negative side, as I already told you, it leads to lack of promotions within the organization. So it leads organizations to increase pay and other opportunities for training without promoting employees. And some of them who still have a traditional mindset might not be very okay with this. But yeah, for a starter, for a mid-level guy, this is all right. And another thing is the pay structures within broadbanding, they are not very sensitive to market changes. So within one band, whatever skills are offered might not be very aligned to changes that are in the that are taking place in the market. But having said that, many organizations in India that have implemented broadbanding, they have better pay structures only as on date. But yeah, in the long run, these are some questions that might come up. Okay, students. In the next lecture, we'll talk about executive compensation, and with that, we are more or less done with the syllabus. Thank you so much. Have a nice day ahead.